Now in this session, we are going to continue with certain problem solving part of the chapter Fundamental Unit of Life. In the previous session, we have discussed some of the multiple choice questions related to several organelles, right? Now in this session also we are going to continue with the multiple choice questions. But in this case, we have just twisted some of the questions. We have framed the questions and their options in a way that we may get confused with the answers. So, the very clear funda, a very clear method of solving any of the multiple choice question is that you should be thorough of the subject. So, once you are prepared with the theory, then definitely you are able to find out the answers of the various questions. You can frame questions for yourself that how many possible questions could be there for the same answer, or same question could have multiple answers also. So now in this session, we will be discussing some of the questions which may confuse you, some of the indirect questions related to the functions, some of the questions in which multiple choices which are given, they may seems to be correct. So let us discuss all these parts now. So here, the very first question is, which of the following organelle synthesizes digestive enzymes that are present in the lysosomes? A question is quite interesting. See, we have to name the organelle that is going to secrete the digestive enzymes and which enzymes which are present in the lysosomes. Options given here are nucleus, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi apparatus. Now, if you have gone thoroughly through your theory, you must be knowing that lysosomes are actually manufactured by the Golgi apparatus. But what about the material which is present inside the lysosome? So here we are saying that we are discussing about the enzymes. We are asking you about the enzymes. So chemically enzymes are proteins. This we have studied while studying the theory also. And it is a quite important point that you must be studying since many classes also. So practically all enzymes are proteins. Now these proteins, they are coded by genes, right? Genes are located in the nucleus. But the nucleus is just carrying the information for these proteins or the enzymes. We cannot say that they are synthesizing it. So next one is smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum, they are actually involved in the lipid biosynthesis. The major function of SER is lipid synthesis. Now next comes the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So rough endoplasmic reticulum is directly involved in the protein synthesis. Why it is rough in nature? Because it is having attached ribosomes. Ribosomes will take on the mRNA, or we can say a ribonucleic acid, and together they are going to synthesize the protein, right? So the synthesis of these enzymes will definitely take part in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So enzymes, being the proteinaceous in nature, they must be synthesized by the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Nucleus can carry the encode for the protein which is transported to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and in combination with ribosomes and RNA, these codes are converted into the protein. And hence, lysosomes, although they themselves are prepared by the Golgi apparatus, but the enzyme is provided by the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So, the next question here. Next question is, mitochondria is known as semi-autonomous organelle. Why? The question is, why these mitochondria are known as semi-autonomous organelle? So to answer this question, you must be aware of the various functions of mitochondria. You know that this mitochondria is known as powerhouse of the cell, right? So why it is called as the powerhouse? It is because they can synthesize and store the energy-rich molecules in the form of ATP. So now the point is that although it is the powerhouse of the cell, but why the semi-autonomous word is coming in reference to mitochondria again? Is this all because it is providing the energy-rich molecules? Actually, no. Let us first see the options given here and then let us find out the answer also. The options given here is, they synthesize energy-rich molecule. Which energy-rich molecule? That is ATP. A new question could be framed that which type of energy-rich molecule is produced or generated by the mitochondria. Options could be any, but the correct answer is to be only single. That is adenosine triphosphate, ATP. But here we are concentrating on the term semi-autonomous. Next option given is it supplies energy to all part of the cells, again related to its powerhouse property. Then comes it participates in the cellular respiration. That means that they can oxidize the glucose molecule completely. Cellular respiration actually means the conversion of glucose molecule to CO2 and water. So it partly takes place in the cytoplasm, and then the second half takes place in the mitochondria. Okay, fine. But is this having any relation with the semi-autonomous term? Actually, again, no. So next is, it contains its own DNA and ribosome. So what? How it is related to semi-autonomous? The points are somehow confusing. So let us find out the answer. The word semi-autonomous means what? That partially or they are actually able to maintain their own functions in their own way. Now just imagine how a cell is maintaining its own functions. It is because who is the controller of these functions? It is of course a nucleus. Entire information related to all of the properties as well as the functions, it is all stored in the form of DNA, where inside the nucleus, in the form of genes which are located over the chromosomes. Now this DNA, it gets converted into RNA, and then RNA attaches to the ribosomes, and then it produces the proteins. Then proteins function in different ways so as to maintain the structure and function of a cell. Now, in the case of mitochondria, we are saying that they are having their own DNA and ribosome. So what does it mean? That they can partially control over themselves. They can maintain their own function due to the presence of their own DNA and the ribosomes. See, the structural proteins which are maintaining the structure is actually present in the chromosomes present inside the nucleus. But there is some extra DNA in the mitochondria which can control this cellular type of functions, these respiratory type of functions, then the functions related to energy production and storage also. So if the chromosome is present, they have to be converted into proteins. Then only such type of functions could be controlled. And such conversion is actually performed by the ribosomes. So here we can say that DNA and ribosome which is present inside the mitochondria helps in the partial control over its own functions, and therefore it is known as a semi-autonomous organelle. And hence we can say that the correct answer for this particular question is option D. Option D, that means it contains its own DNA as well as the ribosomes. Now let us switch to next question here. Which of the following part of the cell is dead in nature? So the point should be very clear now. In a living cell, there is only a limited section or limited part which is considered as dead in nature. You know which part is that? It is only of cell wall in case of plant cells. But the cell wall is absent in an animal cell. Another point or another structure which is a dead organelle or it is a dead part of the cell is vacuole. So whenever you have to answer such type of questions, the answer is automatically, it should be clear in your mind. The dead part is limited and actually it is a cell wall. So the correct answer, without looking at other options also, you can answer this question. But still, let us find out that part also, that how it is considered as a dead part and all that. So basically the cell wall is secreted by a cell, right? And it is made up of cellulose in case of a a plant cell. In other organisms, the chemical composition is of course different. Next is plasma membrane, which we consider as a living membrane, right? Without which a cell cannot survive. Cytoplasm, it is a jelly-like substance, which is a living substance of a cell. Next is ribosomes. So we have already studied that ribosomes are actually involved in the synthesis of proteins. Now comes cell wall. Again, we come back to cell wall. Why it is called as a dead part? Can you think of the answer? We have discussed. Many times you must have crossed this part also. So basically the cell wall is a dead membrane. The reason behind that is it is practically proved actually. If in an experiment, if we remove a cell wall of a plant cell and we keep it in a in vitro condition, that means in the laboratory conditions, then still if proper conditions are maintained, if well nourishment is provided to the cell, it can still survive. Removal of cell wall never going to kill the cell if the proper conditions are maintained in its surrounding. If we remove a plasma membrane, then even if you keep it in that isolated similar condition, a cell will not survive. It is going to die, of course. So this is the reason why we call the cell wall as a dead membrane. That whether it is present or not, it is not going to affect the life of the cell, its structure. But definitely the function is to provide the protection against various conditions. The plants, they have to face many different conditions, and protection against such type of condition is of course provided by the cell wall. But even in the absence of cell wall, if the cell is maintained in the proper conditions in terms of its surrounding medium, then definitely a cell can survive. And therefore, we are calling it as a dead part of the cell. Let us switch to the next question now. Ribosome helps in the synthesis of dash molecules. Which molecules are actually synthesized by these particular special structures? Ribosomes. So actually ribosomes, they are participating in the synthesis of proteins. The right answer for this question is actually proteins. We are giving you this direct answer, but let us find out the fact that how they are helping in the synthesis of proteins. Ribosomes, if you remember the structure, they are associated with the ribonucleic acids. These ribonucleic acids, that is RNA. RNA is actually synthesized, or it is prepared, it is generated from the DNA. The DNA, the functional part of DNA is known as a gene. So gene can provide any information related to structure and the function. It is located over the chromosomes. Now the point is that there is a indirect link between the ribosome and the nucleus, or we can say the chromosomes. Chromosomes, they get converted into they are chemically DNA. They get converted to RNA. RNA, it gets associated with the ribosomes. And this RNA on the other side is containing the code for the synthesis of proteins. So now we can link the answer here also. Ribosome, as it is linked with the RNA, and RNA is linked with the proteins, so definitely ribosome will help in the synthesis of protein molecules. So hence, the right answer is protein. So carbohydrates, they are actually synthesized, carbohydrate, lipid and nucleic acid. All these are synthesized in different other parts of the cell. Let us move to the next question now. The question is, sugars are stored in dash type of plastids in plants. Very important and very interesting question. We have studied already that sugars are stored in which form in the plants? It is in the form of starch. In animals, sugars are stored in the form of glycogen. Now here we are asking, where are they stored? So the answer we have to find out now. The answer or a hint is already given in the question itself, that they are actually stored in the plastids. But the plastids are of different kind. They are chromoplast and leucoplast. Chromoplast is a kind of colored plastid. which is carrying some of the colored pigment, right? Besides this, leucoplast, it is colorless. The colored plastids are actually participating in different functions like photosynthesis, like providing color to the different part of the plants, and etc. But the other side, the leucoplast, they are involved in the storage of various material. Which material? Which are synthesized by the plants. Now, you got the partial answer now. Sugars, they are stored in leucoplast. So what options are given here? It is chloroplast, amyloplast, proteinoplast, and aleoplast. Now, again the confusion arises. Leucoplast, the option is not given here in the question. So what should be the correct answer? So the answer is very clear that the chloroplast, it could not be the answer for this question. Reason is because it is showing the chloroplast, that means green. Chloro stands for chlorophyll, plast is for plastid. So chloroplast, which is containing this green colored pigment, is participating in the, we can say, photosynthesis. That means synthesis of sugar molecule. What is the end product of this photosynthesis? It is glucose, and glucose is the sugar. So this is of course not the answer for this question. Yeah, if the question was that sugars are synthesized in dash type of plastid, then of course the answer would have been chloroplast only. But the point is where it is stored. So now we have to look for these three different kind of plastids now. Amyloplast, proteinoplast, aleoplast. So this aleoplast is actually, this aleo is related to lipids, right? So it is meant for lipid storage. Proteino, the word itself is suggesting that it is related to protein storage. Now these could not be the answer. Now left out is only amyloplast, so it has to be the only answer. But this should not be the way to solve any question. The point is, amylo means sugar. The meaning of this word amylo is actually sugar. So of course you got the answer now, that the storage of sugar will take place inside the amyloplast. Hence the correct answer is option B. Now let us move to the another question. Which of the following is not a function of chromoplast? Very important question. Which is not a function. If you know the functions, you must be knowing that which is not a function also. So here we are asking about the chromoplast function. Actually, which is not the chromoplast function. Let us see the options here. It helps in the process of pollination. You know how whether these chromoplasts can help in this type of pollination process? So actually they help in. It is because the pollination, what does it mean? First you must be knowing this thing. Pollination is a process of transfer of pollen grains from male reproductive part of a flower to a female reproductive part. Now this transfer can take place within the flower, the same flower, as they can have both anthers as well as the stigma, or it may be from one flower to the other or one plant to the other. How? It is by the insects or wind or water or other resources. Now these insects, how do they transfer these pollen grains? Because they get attracted to the color of the flowers, they come nearer and they start sucking the nectar of the flower. Now what happens? During such a process, these pollens get stick to their feet and they are carried from one flower to the another when these insects fly away from such part. So pollination is actually supported by the chromoplast. Now comes photosynthesis. Photosynthesis occurs in the plastids which are green in color. Those which can carry the green colored pigment chlorophyll. So chlorophyll containing the plastid is chloroplast. And of course, therefore it should come in the category of chromoplast. Now the next point is, they store different types of substances synthesized in the plants. So this type of storage, do you think there is any link between the storage and the colored pigments which are present in the chromoplast? No. There is no relation between the storage and the pigments which are providing color here. So this could be the right answer. But let us first find out the next question also. They provide color to the plants or its parts. So that's of course a correct answer. I mean, it is a function of the chromoplast. Now which odd point is present in these options is only the possible option C. So the correct answer for this question is option C. That this storage part is not a function of the chromoplast. Rather, storage is a part which is provided by the different kind of plastid that is known as leucoplast. Let us now move to the another question. Which organelle helps in the metabolism of toxic hydrogen peroxide in our living cell? This hydrogen peroxide is a very dangerous byproduct which is produced during any metabolic, some of the metabolic reactions, especially in the liver and the kidney. So this hydrogen peroxide is actually having a formula H2O2, which is something similar to H2O. Now H2O is water and is essentially required for the life. But this H2O2 on the other hand is very dangerous, and thus they have to be converted to the non-toxic form as soon as they are produced in any metabolic reaction. So this H2O2, when it is converted or when it is metabolized, what it is going to produce? H2O and O2. Now the point is that how this is possible or where it is taking place. So it takes place inside the cell, of course, but inside the cell, which part? It is only possible in an organelle where this enzyme for this type of digestion is present. The enzyme involved in digestion of hydrogen peroxide is enzyme catalase. And this catalase, where it is present, let us find out the answer. Ribosomes? No, because ribosomes are involved in the protein synthetic processes, right? Smooth endoplasmic reticulum? No, they do not metabolize these hydrogen peroxide as they are lacking enzyme catalase. Now comes peroxisome. So peroxisome, can you find any relation between these two terms here? Peroxide. So some direct hint you may get from this, but hint is only a hint. You must be logical, you must be foolproof when you are answering any question. So if this peroxisome, it is of course named by this term only and is of course a right answer also, but actually why it is able to metabolize this hydrogen peroxide? It is due to the presence of the enzyme catalase. Now is it possible in the lysosome also? Because it is also helping in the clearing of your cells also. So this is not so because they do not contain the catalase enzyme. So the right answer for this question is only single, that is option C. So, nice question. A cell, it is a structural and functional unit of your life, right? Now they are of two types as we have already studied, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Prokaryotic is the one which is having a primitive type of nucleus, that is undeveloped nucleus which is lacking the nuclear membrane. Eukaryotic is a kind of cell which contains a very well developed nucleus, right? Now, if we assume that these cells, they are not only different in terms of its nuclear properties, but also these prokaryotes, they do not contain any of the membrane bound organelle, which is of course present in the case of eukaryotes. So this is the basic difference between the prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. Now the point is that all of the cells, whether it is prokaryotes or it is a eukaryote cell, they all are made up of some of the basic components. You know which components? It is a cell membrane, a nucleus and a cytoplasm. So out of these many hints, let us try and find out the answer for this particular question. What is the question? Which of the following is the appropriate combination for the prokaryotic cell? So the options given are, first point is plasma membrane, nucleus and cytoplasm. Of course, It is not a wrong answer. It is definitely a right answer. So before finalizing it, let us just have a look over other options also. Another option is plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, and membrane bound organelles. Now these membrane bound organelles are absent in the prokaryotes. Fine. So this option is now removed. Fine. This is of course a wrong answer. Next is what? Plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, membrane bound organelles, and cell wall. Now what do you think? Membrane bound organelles are of course absent, as we have already said. Now remaining is cell wall. Do all prokaryotic cells contain cell wall? No. Some are having, of course, but all do not have, and secondly even they do not have the membrane bound organelles. So B and C, definitely they could not be the right answer. Option A is still in our hand. It may be correct because there is nothing wrong in that. There is nothing which is absent out of these 3 points in a prokaryotic cell. Another option, let us see another here. Plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, and free ribosomes. So of course, free ribosomes are definitely present in the prokaryotic cells. They do not have any membrane bound ribosome. They are not present over the endoplasmic reticulum. Right? In a eukaryotic cell, these ribosomes are actually present over the surface of the endoplasmic reticulum. But in the case of prokaryotic cells, the ribosomes are freely present in the cytoplasm. So definitely this is the right answer. Now as we can say, A and D, they both are right, but we are not simply focusing over the right option, we are focusing on the appropriate combination. So most appropriate is option B, and hence we can say the right answer for this question is option D. So option D, that means what? That prokaryotic cells, they contain plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoplasm, as well as free ribosomes. Now let us look at the next question here. Which of the following organelle is known as a housekeeper of the cell? Great. So you have to find out which organelle could be known as the housekeeper of the cell. What is the function of housekeeper? What do you mean by this housekeeper actually in general terms? So generally this housekeeper means that who is taking care of the house. In terms of what? In terms of its maintenance, in terms of its cleanliness, in terms of removal of any waste material from there. So it is basically a type of a cleaning system which is maintained inside. Now which organelle is possibly participating? Only the one which is carrying the enzymes for the digestion of any of the waste present inside the cell. So let us find out the options here before answering it. It is lysosomes, ribosomes, peroxisome, centrosome. Now all are some. So you have to find out, you have to think over it. Centrosomes, they are involved in what? They are involved in the cell division. Peroxisome, they are involved in the peroxide digestion, metabolism of hydrogen peroxide. Ribosome, it is involved in protein synthesis. Now comes your lysosome. The word lyso means breakdown. Soma means body. So it's a part of the cell which is involved in breaking down of various material. Which material? Waste material. So these lysosomes, they actually digest the waste material present inside the cell, and this helps in maintaining the interior part of the cell. They help in cleaning up of the system, and hence we can say this must be the correct answer. So which organelle is known as the housekeeper of the cell? It is option A, that is lysosome. Let us see the next question now. The question is, which of the organelle helps in the modification of substances and transporting them to the target site? It is again a function actually, and you have to trace the organelle. First point is where these substances are generally synthesized. Usually when such type of transportation is actually focused, then it is generally related to the organelle like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus and other parts. So basically the substances are produced in the endoplasmic reticulum, like lipids and proteins and others. Now from here, these materials, they are transferred to the Golgi apparatus. In the Golgi apparatus, they are stored over there. Then, according to the demand of the cellular part, these are modified according to that, and then they are transported to the target site in the form of vesicles. And of course, for such type of transport, they need energy also. So, the chloroplast, it is of course not a right answer for this question. Endoplasmic reticulum is related, but it is only having a role of synthesis of substances. They do not modify, they just synthesize and they transport it to the Golgi apparatus. Mitochondria provides energy for such type of activities. But the function of modification and transportation is actually maintained by the organelle, that is Golgi apparatus. So, which is the right answer here now? That is option D. That means Golgi apparatus is the correct answer for this particular question. So now let us end up with these many questions. There are so many questions and you must be knowing the answers, you must be knowing the related questions. Means if the option is wrong, then what could be the possible question for that option also? So you must make your mind in a way, you must prepare any of the chapter or any of the educational part in a way that you can answer the twisted questions also. So now let us end up with this particular part. Thank you so much for listening to this session and we'll meet you soon in the next session. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.